The President of the United States stood at the podium and told the world something extraordinary, and almost nobody caught it. He listed the countries Iran had struck: Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. And then he said it. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Let that sink in. The most powerful military on earth launched a war and was shocked when the other side fought back. This was not a slip. This was not spin. This was the commander-in-chief of the American empire admitting on camera that the war plan assumed the enemy would simply surrender after the first blow. Decapitate the leadership, destroy the infrastructure, wait for the white flag. That was the entire strategy. And when the white flag never came, when Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, when missiles rained on American allies across the Gulf, Washington had no plan B. His press secretary doubled down. She stood behind the White House lectern and declared, with perfect confidence, that Iran had been defeated militarily. The only problem, she explained, was that the Iranians were apparently too stupid to realize it. That was the official diagnosis. Not that the strategy was flawed, not that the intelligence was wrong. The enemy simply lacked the good sense to know they had lost. And if they didn't accept this reality soon, the president would, her exact words, unleash hell. Meanwhile, the Secretary of War went further. He told reporters America negotiates with bombs, that there was no need for diplomacy because the military campaign was, quote, one for the history books. He seemed elated, triumphant even, and he was describing a war that, by every serious strategic measure, was already slipping out of American control. What you are witnessing is not strength. It is the rhetoric of an empire that cannot process the possibility of its own failure. And that inability, that blind spot, is the single most important factor shaping the outcome of this war. Not missiles, not troop counts. Hubris. What you will understand by the end. By the end of this episode, you will understand something that almost no mainstream analyst is willing to say out loud. This war is not really between America and Iran. That is the surface layer. Beneath it, a far more consequential contest is underway. A contest between the American empire and its own enforcer, Israel, for control of the Middle East. You will understand why the global financial system needs an empire, why America can no longer fulfill that role, and why Israel is methodically proving that it can. You will see how Iran's resistance is not just a military story, but an economic and strategic transformation that is redrawing the map of Eurasia. And you will learn 3 principles from game theory that explain why today's alliances will shatter and why enemies become partners when the power balance shifts. This is the logic behind Pax Judaica, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every war is fought across 4 dimensions. There's the military dimension, the bombs, the troops, the hardware. There's the economic dimension, who pays, who profits, who bleeds. There's the political dimension, alliances, domestic support, coalition cohesion. And there's the narrative dimension, how the world perceives the conflict, who history will judge as the aggressor and who as the defender. America is fighting this war in one direction. It has a military strategy, decapitation and forced surrender. And it is trying to bend every other dimension to serve that strategy. It is ordering NATO to open the Strait of Hormuz. It is pressuring media to report the war as a success. It is unsanctioning Russian and Iranian oil to keep prices down, even though this directly funds the enemy. Everything, narrative, politics, economics, must conform to the military plan. There is no feedback loop. There is no adjustment mechanism. The strategy is the strategy, and the world must fall in line. Iran is fighting the war in the opposite direction entirely. Its military operations are calibrated to serve economic, political, and narrative goals simultaneously. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a military choke point. It is a toll booth. Iran lets Chinese ships through because China is its primary oil buyer. It lets Japanese ships through, and Qatari ships, and Omani ships, countries willing to negotiate. Every military action is designed to strengthen Iran's economy, split the Gulf coalition, and win global opinion. The military serves the strategy. It does not dictate it. This asymmetry has three devastating consequences for America. The first is the inability to reflect. When everything must conform to the military plan, there is no room to sit down, assess what is failing, and change course. The second is rigidity. When the plan is not working, America does not adapt. It escalates. It doubles down on bombing. It considers ground troops, which most military analysts regard as somewhere between counterproductive and suicidal. The third is fragility. When you force the world to support your war, the world resists. Allies drag their feet. The economy fractures. Resupply becomes a nightmare. Iran, by contrast, is gaining popular support, recruiting foreign sympathy, strengthening its economy, and growing more resilient with each passing week. One side is burning through its reserves, the other is accumulating them. To understand why America cannot win this war, you have to understand something that most people overlook about the American military. It was not built to win wars. It was built to spend money. For most of its history, America had no standing army. The Founding Fathers feared a professional military as a threat to liberty, and they were right to. A professional army is an institution with its own interests, its own budget, its own survival instinct. America only built one because it had no choice in 2 world wars. The problem is that after 1945, the apparatus did not disband. It stayed. It metastasized. And it needed a reason to exist. That reason was the Cold War. Then the War on Terror. Then whatever comes next. There is always a next war because wars are not the failure state of the military-industrial complex. They are its business model. Julian Assange put it with surgical precision. The point of American wars is not to win them. It is to make them endless, so that taxpayer money flows continuously into the hands of a transnational elite. America accounts for 41% of all global military spending. Russia, its main adversary, spends 1/10 of that. And yet the return on this investment is catastrophic. The Patriot missile system, worth billions, cannot reliably stop cheap Iranian drones. The F-35, the most advanced fighter jet on Earth, $100 million per unit, 26 years in development, has been shot down by Iranian air defenses. The USS Gerald Ford, the most advanced supercarrier ever built at $13 billion, entered the war theater and had to withdraw within 3 weeks. Whether it was an internal fire, an Iranian missile strike, or simply the Pentagon realizing the ship was useless in actual combat, the result is the same. $13 billion, 3 weeks, gone. The corruption is structural. The day before September 11, 2001, the Secretary of Defense held a press conference and announced that $2 trillion were missing from the Pentagon budget. Unaccounted for. A single Army contractor stole $103 million, and the Army did not notice until the IRS flagged her tax returns. Boeing receives $20 billion a year in government contracts, spends $18 million on lobbying and political donations to secure them, and its civilian planes are falling out of the sky. Whistleblowers who tried to expose the company died under mysterious circumstances before they could testify. This is not an army. It is a money laundering operation with tanks. Against this backdrop, America faces 3 constraints in the Iran war that no amount of rhetoric can overcome. The first is political will. This war is deeply unpopular at home. Only about 40% of Americans support it, and that number is falling. The president has requested $200 billion in war funding. He may reinstate the draft. But you cannot sustain a war of choice in a democracy when the majority of your citizens oppose it, especially a war that delivers no visible victories and no clear endpoint. The second is manufacturing capacity. Decades of deindustrialization have left America unable to replenish its own arsenal at wartime speed. If you lose planes, if you expend too many precision munitions, you cannot replace them fast enough. The factories do not exist. The supply chains are not there. In a prolonged conflict, America simply runs out of things to drop. The third is casualty tolerance. The American military is afraid to report its own losses. In a war, soldiers die. That is the fundamental reality of armed conflict. But the Pentagon has become so terrified of political backlash that it conceals or minimizes casualties, which in turn prevents honest strategic assessment. Compare this to Iwo Jima, where 6,000 Marines died taking a single island, and America celebrated their sacrifice as proof of national resolve. That America no longer exists. The current America sent roughly 5,000 Marines into Iran, hoping it would be enough to win the war. It was not a strategy, it was a wish. Now, here is where the analysis takes a turn that most commentators will not make. If you understand how the global system actually works, you understand that at its core is an empire. The muscle that enforces the rules, protects the trade routes, and shapes the geopolitical landscape. Wrapped around the empire is the financial layer. Wall Street, the City of London, the Bank of International Settlements, asset managers like BlackRock, the game masters who set the rules of play. Together, they generate the global economy denominated in dollars, legitimized by multilateral institutions like the UN and WTO that make the system appear fair and rules-based. And surrounding all of it is the cultural, educational, and media infrastructure that makes people believe this arrangement is natural. Every player in the system, from the financiers to the intelligence agencies to the multinational corporations, has one overriding interest: maintaining the status quo. The system works for them. But there is a problem. The empire at the core is failing. America is losing the war. America's military is corrupt. Its population is divided. Its manufacturing base is hollowed out. And its strategic thinking is frozen in a posture of permanent escalation. If the empire falls, the entire edifice threatens to collapse, and everyone with money in the system loses. So, the system needs a replacement, and the replacement is auditioning right now. Think of it like venture capital. Two companies pitch you for investment. Company A has 100 successful ventures, enormous resources, decades of experience, but no particular hunger. If this new project fails, so what? They can absorb the loss. Company B is young, scrappy, has failed before, but they're willing to work 16 hours a day, stake everything on the outcome, and fight with the intensity of people who know that failure means extinction. If you are a smart investor, you put your money on Company B. Because desperation and determination produce results that comfort and complacency never can. Israel is Company B, and it is proving it on every front. Gaza, whatever you think of the moral dimension, was a proof of concept. 82% of Israelis supported the expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza. 66% believed they were fighting an existential enemy. That is unity. That is determination. Americans do not have it. Most Americans oppose what Israel did in Gaza, but Israelis themselves were unified behind the war effort. This is what the global elite are watching. Not the morality, but the capacity. The Lebanon pager operation cost $275, took decades of patient intelligence work to execute, and demonstrated a level of operational sophistication that the American military, with its trillion-dollar budgets, cannot match. Israel is telling the world, we will do the job, we will do it cheaply, and we will do it with a level of strategic creativity that the bloated American machine has long since lost. Throughout history, empires have subcontracted their violence to mercenaries, and then been replaced by those same mercenaries. The Romans began as soldiers for hire for the Etruscans. The Aztecs served the Culhua Mexica. The Greeks fought for the Persians, the Mongols for the Chinese, the Mamluks for the Ayyubid dynasty in Egypt. In every case, the pattern is the same. The mercenary realizes that the empire is corrupt, decadent, and weak, and takes over. Israel was created by the British and Americans as their enforcer in the Middle East, a strategic asset to control oil and maintain regional instability. For decades, it played that role. Now, the enforcer is looking at the empire and asking the obvious question. We are the ones making the sacrifices. We are the ones doing the work. We are the ones absorbing the hatred of the world. Why should we not be the empire? So, what does this new order actually look like? Start with the Greater Israel Project. The vision held by a significant faction in Israeli politics that the biblical promise extends from the Nile to the Euphrates, encompassing parts of Egypt, all of Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and even portions of Turkey. Now, notice something critical about this map. Iran is not on it. Persia is not part of the Greater Israel Project. So why is Israel at war with Iran? Because the real obstacle to Greater Israel is not Iran. It is the American empire. Look at a map of American military bases in the Middle East. They blanket the territory that Greater Israel claims. The Americans are the ones sitting on that land. This war against Iran serves a dual purpose for Israel. It weakens Iran as a future regional rival, yes, but far more importantly, it overextends America, drains American resources, erodes American political will, and accelerates the day when American forces must withdraw from the region. Once America leaves, Israel steps in. The economic architecture is already being built. Israel sits at the intersection of the India-Middle East-Europe trade corridor. For India to reach Europe by land, the route passes through Israel. The same corridor connects to Africa, and Israel is uniquely positioned to serve as a gateway between the African continent and the European and Asian markets. Add to this the Russia-Ukraine dimension. Israeli territory can channel Russian and Ukrainian energy and agricultural products into Africa and beyond. The geography is extraordinary. Israel, a country the size of New Jersey, becomes the hub of 3 continents' trade. Then, there is the digital infrastructure. Israel has more data centers than any other country in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are trying to compete, but they depend entirely on imported expertise. They lack the human capital, the engineers, the scientists, the coders. Israel does not. It has world-class universities, a thriving tech sector, and the intelligence community's decades of experience in surveillance technology. As AI becomes the backbone of modern statecraft, enabling the surveillance, monitoring, and control that every empire requires, Israel is positioned to dominate the region's digital architecture. This is not a side project. This is the nervous system of Pax Judaica. Game theory gives us 3 principles that explain how this new order will crystallize. The first law: the strong respect each other and prey on the weak. This seems counterintuitive. Why would Israel and Iran, currently at war, ever cooperate? Because if both prove they are strong, and the Gulf states and America prove they are weak, the rational move for both strong players is to stop fighting each other and divide the spoils. It makes no strategic sense for 2 powerful actors to destroy each other when weaker players are available to exploit. The ideology says they are enemies. The game theory says they will partner, not out of friendship, but out of cold, calculated self-interest. The second law: the weak cannot cooperate effectively. Look at the GCC, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar. 6 countries with enormous combined wealth. In theory, if they pooled their resources, they could rival either Israel or Iran. In practice, they never will. Weak players do not form effective coalitions. They lack the strategic cohesion, the institutional trust, and the long-term vision required to act as a unified bloc. Instead, each weak player seeks the protection of a strong patron. Right now, that patron is America. When America withdraws, each will scramble to align with either Israel or Iran. Qatar and Oman will likely lean toward Tehran. Saudi Arabia and the UAE toward Tel Aviv. The GCC as a geopolitical force will cease to exist. The third law: power transitions require the old empire to be pushed out. Empires do not surrender power voluntarily. America can theoretically drag this war on for 20 years, but the financial elite do not want to wait 20 years. So, the strategy, and this is the most provocative claim in this analysis, is to force an American implosion. Not through military defeat on the battlefield, but through economic crisis at home. Crash the markets, keep oil prices painfully high, stoke domestic unrest. If America descends into internal chaos, the military has no choice but to retreat from its global positions, and Israel fills the vacuum by default. And Iran? Iran emerges as the other pole. The war has done something its architects never intended. It has freed Iran from sanctions. Before the war, Iran was cut off from the global economy. The Americans unsanctioned Iranian oil to keep world prices down, and in doing so, handed Iran $14 billion virtually overnight, more than Iran's entire annual defense budget. Iran is now embedded in 2 of the most important trade networks on Earth, China's Belt and Road Initiative and the Russia-Iran North-South Transport Corridor. For China to reach Europe by land, the route passes through Iran. For Russia to access India, the route passes through Iran. The more this war continues, the more Iran profits. It has less incentive to end the fighting than anyone. So, here is the picture that emerges when the smoke clears. 2 regional powers, Israel and Iran, each controlling their own trade networks, their own resource bases, their own spheres of influence. Israel commanding the Western Middle East, the Mediterranean trade routes, the AI and surveillance infrastructure, and the corridor linking Europe to India and Africa. Iran commanding the eastern flank, the Strait of Hormuz, the Belt and Road Junction, and the north-south corridor linking Russia to the Indian Ocean. The American empire retreats across the Atlantic. The Gulf states fragment and align with one pole or the other, and the global financial system, which needs an enforcer, which needs muscle, which needs someone willing to do the ugly work of maintaining order, transfers its backing from Washington to Tel Aviv. Not because of ideology, not because of religion, because the numbers work, because the game theory demands it. This is not prophecy. This is a framework. It is a way of reading the forces at play, military, economic, financial, strategic, and following their logic to a probable conclusion. The value is not in being right. The value is in seeing the structure beneath the chaos. Because if this framework holds, you will understand the next 5 years of geopolitics before they happen. And if it does not hold, if reality takes a different path, you will have the analytical tools to understand exactly why and to adjust your thinking accordingly. The world is not random. It is a game. And the players who understand the rules are the ones who shape the outcome. The rest are pieces on the board. The question you have to ask yourself is, which one are you?